Chapter 638. Everyone could hear the resentment in his voice. The onlookers looked at each other. It seemed that this guy was unhappy that he didn't kill Hu Changsho's son. Hu Changsho's eyes flashed with killing intent. He turned around and disappeared in the air. Hu Yuntian happily said goodbye to Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu and left as well. The three guards went to Yu Qianzhou's stall in fear to clean up their colleague's corpse. This guy was so crazy that he didn't even put Hu Changsho in his eyes. They were really worried that he would do something out of line again. The three of them buried their heads in collecting the corpse. They didn't even have the courage to look up at Yu Qianzhou. Sikongju took a deep look at Yu Qianzhou and waved his hand at Mu Lianqiu and the others. He led the crowd away and continued to maintain the order of the cornucopia. Seeing that the show had come to an end and that there was nothing to see, the rulers in the air all disappeared. When Lan Feng looked at Nongzhu and smiled bitterly, as if saying, "This guy won't bear a grudge against me, right?" The two of them disappeared together with Lu Yanqing. Bing Qingzi's pupils shrank when he saw Yu Qianzhou's blood orchid. His eyes flickered and he left. Only Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu didn't leave. Soon, the stalls that were divided by white lines returned to their original appearance. Regardless of whether it was the stall owners or the people lingering there, their gazes were always faintly discernible as they looked at Yu Qianzhou, filled with reverence. She had heard many rumors about Yu Qianzhou, but this was the first time she had seen him act so domineering. He killed a cultivator in the early stage of tribulation passing just because of a disagreement, and that cultivator was a disciple of the world-famous Cloud Palace. Then, he brazenly challenged 6 disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace in front of everyone, including 2 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. In the end, the disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace admitted defeat and retreated. In addition, Pei Fang, an expert in the late stage of spirit severing. Now, in everyone's mind, Yu Qianzhou was the #1 expert below the spirit severing stage. Mo Xiaojun stood quietly behind Yu Qianzhou, his attitude becoming more and more respectful. Niu Yid had appointed them as the leader, and he did not disgrace them. Yi Qing, who was standing at the side, looked at Yu Qianzhou with even more admiration. Perhaps it was because of the sense of identity, he didn't feel that Yu Qianzhou's actions were too arrogant. Instead, he thought that Yu Qianzhou had won glory for the Chinese cultivation world. In fact, there were many disciples from various sects who had snuck in from the Chinese cultivation world. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to get close to Yu Qianzhou like Yi Qing did. But it didn't affect their crazy worship of Yu Qianzhou at all. Usually, they didn't dare to raise their heads here. Suddenly seeing such a figure in the cultivation world of Huaxia, they were simply overwhelmed with emotions, unable to calm down, and extremely excited. Was Yu Qianzhou arrogant? Not at all. They couldn't wait for Yu Qianzhou to be 10,000 times more arrogant. It would be best if he could trample all the countries under his feet. After silently admiring him for a while, they left quietly. They wanted to report what had happened here to the Chinese cultivation world as soon as possible. Not long after, Furong, Zi, Enchantress, and Amano came running. After Nongzhu went back, seeing that the situation had calmed down, she allowed them to come out. "Are you all right?" The 3 girls asked almost at the same time. "What can happen to me?" When Yu Qianzhou saw Furong, the haze on his face turned into a smile, and he asked, "What are you doing here? Do you want to help me set up a stall?" "Wow!" Ziyi stared at Xuelan in the stall and exclaimed, "Selling things is such a fun thing. Why didn't you invite me?" Then she crossed the stall excitedly and pushed Yu Qianzhou away. She stood on the seller's seat and looked around, as if she really hoped that someone would come to buy things from her. She usually spent money to buy things, but this was the first time she tasted selling things. Furong didn't want to be outdone. She stood beside Zi happily, and the two of them shared the feeling of being a stall owner. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. These two women didn't know how hard it was to earn money, and they thought it was a fun thing. If there was a chance in the future, he would let them play every day. Let's see if they would still be in such a good mood. I also want to have a taste of living off a woman. Enchantress stood beside Yu Qianqiu with a smile, while Mano, Zi, and Mo Xiaojun stood side by side, looking around vigilantly. Yiqing glanced at Furong from time to time, trying to hide the shock in his heart. Although Hibiscus rarely showed her face on the supporting immortal island, she had coincidentally seen her once in the myriad fragrance garden. After careful observation, he confirmed that she was the daughter of Wanfan Garden's principal elder, Furong. What he couldn't understand was why Furong and Yu Qianqiu were here together. Senior Yu, this junior still has some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. Yiqing suddenly bowed respectfully to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded at him. Furong took a glance and realized that this person looked familiar, but she couldn't recognize him, so she didn't think too much about it. After Yiqing got permission, he quickly walked out of the treasure basin. He wanted to think of a way to send this shocking news back to Fuxian Island. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes as he sized up Zi, Furong, and Enchantress. His lips curled into a meaningful smile. Yan Zhuixing nodded at Man Hu, and the two of them walked towards Yu Qianqiu's stall. Because of the commotion earlier, the bustling crowd didn't dare to come over, causing the stall to be abnormally quiet. There wasn't even a single person passing by, and everyone took a detour. Just as Zi was feeling depressed, she suddenly saw two people walking over. She immediately said excitedly, "Are you buying? How much do you want to buy?" Before she could finish, she realized it was someone she knew from the saber drawing assembly. "Miss Zi, long time no see." Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands. Yu Qianqiu sneered, "Brother Yan, could it be that you want to wreck my stall again?" When Zi heard that they wanted to wreck her stall, she immediately took out her dark purple bamboo rod and was about to make a move. "Brother Yu, it's meaningless to say that." Yan Zhuixing glanced at the blood orchids on the stall and said with a smile, "I saw that Brother Yu's stall was deserted, so I wanted to invite Brother Yu to visit our Ice Palace's shop when you have time. Perhaps there are people who will purchase a large amount of Brother Yu's 7-star blood orchids. Could it be him?" Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Brother Yan. I will definitely pay a visit. Hee. Then I won't disturb Brother Yu's business anymore. Goodbye." Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands and left with Man Hu. Yu Qianqiu stared at the two's departing figures with flickering eyes. Suddenly, he was pulled back to reality by the noise around him. He saw many people rushing towards the center of the treasure basin. "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" The World Commerce Association put up a new signboard and started selling the 7 treasure pill that can help break through the bottleneck of cultivation. Ah! Then we have to hurry and take a look. Maybe we loose cultivators will have a chance to buy it and make a huge profit. When the news about the 7 treasure pill came from the crowd, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Young Master Mo, go take a look." "Yes." Young Master Mo accepted the order and left. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed into slits as he muttered to himself, selling the 7 treasure pill. "Yin Bai Kong, your time of misfortune has come." Ever since he used Niu Yud's identity to sell the last batch of limit-breaking pills to Yin Bai Kong, he had decided to stop. It wasn't that he didn't want to make more money, but after seeing the various countries in Yin Bai Kong's secret game, he knew that he wouldn't be able to make a fortune for long. Even though the country's alliance was crushed by Yin Bai Kong once, none of them were to be trifled with. They definitely wouldn't sit by and watch the World Commerce Association continue like this. To be able to become a lord in the cultivation world, no one was a fool. The mountains that stretched for dozens of miles had been sealed off by thick Yin fog for countless years. Raging winds carried phosphorus ghost flames everywhere. Although the environment was harsh, it was a rare cultivation treasure land with abundant chi for the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators who lived here. Just as the ghost cultivators were cultivating as usual, a gust of chi that was as thick as ink suddenly erupted violently from the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. The strong airflow whistled out crazily, and even the nearby rocks that weighed hundreds of kilograms were blown away. In an instant, the dark clouds that covered the sky above the wind valley became restless, causing the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators to look over. An indescribable feeling of terror spread in the hearts of the ghost cultivators, just when the 9 nether cave had just undergone an unusual change. Inside the Ghost King Palace, Yuji led the group of ghost generals and arrived one after another. Braving the strong wind, they landed a few hundred meters away from the nether cave. All of them were bewildered. Chi that was as thick as ink continuously whistled out of the cave along with the strong wind. Chapter 639. Such a thick energy, for ghost cultivators, was something that they could not wish for. However, such an abnormal change caused the hearts of all the ghost cultivators to be filled with terror. It was a type of terror towards the unknown. Yuji pursed her lips, her hair blowing in the strong wind. The group of ghost generals behind her also had bewildered gazes, not knowing what was going to happen. Shun Tian Island, by Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged in a large room, suddenly opened his eyes and suddenly disappeared from the room. When he reappeared, he was already standing at the edge of the 1,000-mile lake, facing the direction of the wind valley, holding a bright moon in one hand. More accurately, it was a mirror that glowed with a bright white light. All of a sudden, the white light retracted back into the mirror. On the surface of the ancient and smooth mirror that was lined with vine patterns, the scene in front of the 9 nether caves suddenly appeared. Even the bewildered Yuji and the others appeared in the mirror. The mirror floated in front of him. Bai Changchun frowned, his eyes filled with puzzlement. He clearly did not know what was going on. Inside the 9 netherworld cave, after crossing the netherworld flame sea, the majestic underworld gate let out a deep and heart-palpitating sound. The gap of the gate gradually became larger, and the netherworld flame sea that had been burning for who knows how many years began to violently shake. The chaotic airflow caused the various skeletal statues on the huge underworld iron mountain to let out all kinds of cries. Men and women, old and young, large and small, the skeletal statues seemed to come to life, crying to someone about the misfortune of their previous life. All kinds of cries gathered in the underground space, echoing endlessly, creating a scene of chaos. If Yu Qianqiu was here, he would definitely be shocked. The underworld gate that had been closed for who knows how many years was actually slowly opening. When the majestic, thick, and dark underworld gate opened to a meter wide, it stopped moving. Behind the gate, there was a black light constantly rotating. Suddenly, 2 white lights flashed. With 2 shio sounds, the 2 white lights turned into 2 figures that stopped in front of the underworld gate. 2 white-robed men that looked exactly the same appeared. Their faces were also snow-white and pale, so pale that it was a bit abnormal, as if they were twin brothers. The 2 of them coldly looked around. After a long time, one of them slowly said, "Everything is normal." Another person nodded and said, "Big brother, why did the Underworld Emperor ask us to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds?" The former shook his head and said, "It was Lady Blackpool's idea." Hearing this, the latter was taken aback and sighed, "Big brother, have you noticed that because the Underworld Emperor doesn't get involved in the affairs of the underworld, Lady Blackpool has been getting involved in more and more things? I'm afraid it's not a good thing. Shut up if you don't want to get into trouble." The former warned, "This is not something you and I should worry about. Don't say such things in the future." "Got it." The latter shook his head helplessly. The former sized up his surroundings once more and said calmly, "Let's go. Let's go back." The 2 of them had just turned around when they suddenly shuddered at the same time. Their gazes burned as they stared at the netherworld gate. Of the two knockers on the gate of the netherworld, only one remained. One of the heaven-devouring beast heads was missing. Not only a knocker, but two of its fangs were also missing. No one knew where they went. After the two of them stared at it for a while, the latter said in bewilderment, "Look at the saw marks on it. It seems that it was cut off by someone." The former was dumbfounded and speechless for a while. Then he murmured, "Who is so daring to destroy the things on the gate of the netherworld?" The latter scratched his head and said, "Logically speaking, it's impossible. This is not a place that anyone can come to. The people of the underworld can't open the gate of the netherworld from the inside without the token. And the mortals of the outside world can't pass through the netherworld fire sea and come here. Could it be the work of the ghost cultivators in the human world?" The former shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be the ghost cultivators. Once the ghost cultivators come here, their vitality will be burned away by the netherworld fire sea and they can't return to the human world. Otherwise, their souls will be destroyed and they will never be able to reincarnate. The only way for the ghost cultivators to come here is to open the gate of the netherworld and return to the underworld. Once they turn back, they will die. It's not this and it's not that. What is going on? It can't fall down by itself, can it? Even if it fell down, we should still be able to see something on the ground. There are clear saw marks on it. Could it be?" The latter suddenly stopped talking. The former turned his head and asked, "Could it be what?" The latter looked around and said softly, "Big brother, don't you think this is a little strange? Why did Madame Blackpool have to patrol the 72 underworld passages at this time? It just so happened that the gate of the netherworld here was destroyed. Could it be that someone inside was ordered to come out and do it?" The former heard this and frowned deeply. After thinking for a long time, he said in a deep voice, "Don't make wild guesses. We just need to report it truthfully. We don't need to worry about other things. Let's go back." The two of them turned into two white lights and shot into the gate of the netherworld. They instantly disappeared into the black light that rotated like a disc-shaped flowing cloud. Not long after, the gate of the netherworld let out a dull sound that made people's hearts palpitate again and slowly closed. The moment the door closed, the underground space that had been created by the chaotic images slowly returned to normal. Outside the 9th netherworld cave, the surging strong wind suddenly gradually slowed down, and the ink-like yin-chi also slowly withdrew. Very soon, everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Standing on the opposite cliff wall, Yuji and the group of ghost generals were looking at each other. None of them knew what was happening in the underworld cave. The group of ghost cultivators waited for a long time, but they didn't see any abnormal reaction. Yuji frowned and waved her hand, "We'll talk about it when we get back." Then, the group of ghost cultivators quickly left the place. Beside the 1,000 Miles Lake on Shuntian Island, Bai Changchun waved his hand after the scene in the mirror of silence returned to normal. He waved his hand and kept the mirror as he looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking. The vast netherworld formed a world of its own. The ultimate place of birth, aging, sickness, and death was the netherworld. 20 big blood-red words were engraved on a huge black stone tablet. They could be seen clearly from afar. The stone tablet and the ancient words revealed the vicissitudes of time. They were simple and unadorned, yet extraordinary. Anyone who saw it would have the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. Under the base of the stone tablet that looked like a mountain, a gate slowly opened. 2 white lights flashed and the gate slowly closed. The 2 people who appeared in front of the gate were the 2 white-robed men who appeared outside the gate to the netherworld. In front of the gate, there were 2 soldiers in iron armor guarding. They were tall and sturdy, their backs were strong and their waists were strong. Their eyes were wide like copper bells as they stared at the newcomers. The 2 white-robed men each turned to face a soldier and took out a green token the size of a palm. They said, "Liu Ben, Liu Pao, return to the netherworld to report." They took out the token to prove that they were not ghost cultivators from the outside world. The guards here only recognized the token. Without the token, they would be escorted to the endless dark cliff to work as laborers. One of the soldiers shouted in a booming voice, "Since you have the token, you are not allowed to stay. Leave quickly." His loud voice echoed in the surroundings. The two white-robed men didn't say anything else. They cupped their fists and turned into two white lights as they fled into the distance. The two of them had been flying at high speed in the darkness. The masters of those palaces were all figures whose status was second only to the emperor of the underworld. However, there were differences in status among the 5 masters. The master who lived on the first mountain to the left of the emperor of the underworld was the one with the most power and the highest status among the 5 masters, besides the emperor of the underworld. For many years, the emperor of the underworld rarely showed up and interfered with anything. Most of the affairs were handled by this master. Lu Ben and Lu Pao landed on this mountain peak. To be exact, they landed outside the gate of the palace on the mountain peak. Even though they worked in the emperor of the underworld, they didn't dare to trespass this palace, the dark palace of Madame He Chi. It was a body that was extremely alluring to men. Her plump breasts rose high, and her skin was as smooth as cream. Her figure was moderately plump, and a beautiful face appeared on the surface of the water. Her head was resting on the thigh of the man behind her, and 2 hands were gently massaging her temples. The body that men couldn't refuse was soaking in the hot spring. 5 handsome and strong men surrounded her, not even a single strand of cloth on them. Although those alluring bodies were irresistible to men, there was no trace of impulsive desire in the eyes of these 5 men. Their expressions were cautious. 2 hands were massaging her head, and the remaining 8 hands were carefully massaging various parts of her body. The plump and ravine private parts were not left behind. The 8 hands were moving and massaging every part of her body. Resting on the thigh of the man, the beautiful face looked extremely comfortable. Her eyes were hazy, and her lips were slightly open, letting out a soft moan. The gauze curtain was lifted, and the female official who was outside the hall walked in. Seeing that the woman in the pool was enjoying herself, she lowered her head and waited quietly. The woman in the pool closed her eyes and said, "Fei Feng, what's the matter?" Although her words were normal, her tone was full of arrogance. The female official who was called Fei Feng said respectfully, "Madam, Lu Ben, who was patrolling the 72 world passages, has returned to report. He is waiting outside the hall." "An." The woman in the pool softly nodded and slightly raised her hand. The 5 massaging men immediately stopped. The 5 men gently carried the naked body out of the hot spring and put her down on the shore. Immediately, someone brought a towel to dry the water droplets on her body. Another person brought a black palace gauze dress and helped her put it on. The black gauze curtain was lifted, and a beautiful woman wearing a black palace gauze dress walked out. Her face was so cold that no expression could be seen on it. She had an extremely noble temperament, which was completely different from her appearance in the hot spring. Dragging a 3-meter-long skirt, she walked to the main hall and gently sat on the seat of honor. Her phoenix eyes coldly looked outside the hall. This was the famous Madame He Chi in the netherworld. The female official, Fei Feng, quickly led Lu Ben in. Lu Ben walked to the hall and knelt down. He did not dare to raise his head and reported the results of the inspection in detail. After listening to him expressionlessly, Madame He Chi raised her hand, and Fei Feng quickly led Lu Ben out. From the beginning to the end, Madame He Chi didn't say a word to Lu Ben. In the cornucopia, Yu Qianqiu's stall had been open for a whole day. Except for Yan Juixing, no one asked about it. Ziyi waited excitedly for a long time, but as she waited, she became listless. She did not have the patience to do this business that had no customers anymore. In the end, she pulled Furong and ran back. After a whole day, Yu Qianqiu knew that there was no point in continuing to set up the stall. With such a high price, it was estimated that no one would buy it anymore. What made him suspicious was that it was Yan Zhuixing and his men who bought a large amount of 7-star blood orchids from the treasure tower. He packed up the stall and returned to the Wen family's shop. Nongzhu called him up from the window on the top floor. With a dark face, Yu Qianqiu turned a deaf ear and went back to his room. Sometimes, when you were unhappy, you needed to show it and let others know that you were unhappy. Otherwise, others would easily make you unhappy again in the future. The three people on the top floor looked at each other. Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that he is still angry. He is giving us a hard time. This guy has a problem. I will go and have a look." Nongzhu swaggered down the stairs. Ziyi and Furong were in the room and continued to fiddle with the things they bought. When Yu Qianqiu came in and looked at the room that had almost become a warehouse, he said to Ziyi with a dark face, "Go back to your room." Ziyi naturally wanted to oppose him, but when she saw that Yu Qianqiu seemed to be really unhappy, he stuck out his bright red tongue at Furong, threw away the things in his hands and quickly left. Furong looked at Yu Qianqiu weakly and said, "Are you unhappy? Did I make you angry?" Yu Qianqiu turned around and bolted the door and window. With a dark face, he nodded and said, "Yes, you made me unhappy." Furong immediately became nervous. She put down the things in her hands and whispered, "What did I do wrong? I will definitely change." "Well, you haven't let me touch you for a long time. This is your biggest mistake." Yu Qianqiu walked behind her and suddenly laughed. He put his arms around her waist and slid one of his hands directly into her collar. Furong immediately let out a cry of surprise. The couple rolled on the bed and made love. Nongzhu came down and met Ziyi, who was running away. They talked casually for a while. Ziyi told her that Yu Qianqiu was angry. Nongzhu waved her hand disapprovingly and asked Ziyi to go back first. She still swaggered to the door of Yu Qianqiu's room. She pushed the door, but found it was bolted. When she was about to use her divine sense to have a look, Yu Qianqiu's roar suddenly came from inside, "Get out of my way. Don't ruin my plan." Then came the messy voice. Nongzhu was stunned and muttered awkwardly, "What bad luck." She slapped the door heavily and shouted, "When you are done, come up here. I have something to tell you." Then she turned around and went back. After returning upstairs, Wen Lanfeng saw that he looked strange and asked, "How is it?" "Wait a little longer. He is busy." Nongzhu could only say so. Just as it was about to break through the door of the small building, a flash of silver lightning directly repelled the black light with a bang. The black light appeared and Lady Blackpool staggered back for a dozen steps. She didn't stop until she reached a tree trunk in the deep wood forest. Lady Blackpool frowned and yelled harshly, "Qian Jun, how dare you attack me?" A silver light flashed in front of the building. A middle-aged man wearing silver armor, with long hair flying in the wind and stubble all over his face showed up. He stared at her indifferently and said, "Blackpool, this is not a place for you to behave atrociously. Don't you know where this place is? You can't trespass without permission." Lady Blackpool gritted her teeth and said with resentment in her eyes, "I will go wherever I want. It's not up to you, a servant. Get out of my way. I want to see the Emperor of the Underworld." The middle-aged man called Qian Jun said emotionlessly, "The Emperor of the Underworld is painting and can't be disturbed. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me, a servant, for kicking you out of the Dark Nether Palace." "You." Lady Blackpool didn't know what to say. She knew she was no match for Qian Jun. She lifted her dress and knelt down in front of the building, saying, "Blackpool is here to see the Emperor of the Underworld. I have something important to report." After a moment of silence, a nonchalant voice came out from the building, "Qian Jun, let her in." His tone was gentle, making anyone who heard it feel comfortable in their heart. It was filled with a calmness that stood aloof from worldly affairs. Yes. Qian-jun bowed to the inside of the building. With a flash of silver light, he disappeared. Lady Blackpool stood up and glanced around with resentment in her eyes. She waved her hand to smooth the long tail of her dress. In the blink of an eye, she had become another noble lady. He slowly walked into the small building. The decorations in the building were elegant, without a trace of luxury. Instead, there were many ancient scrolls piled up. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she wouldn't believe that the Emperor of the Underworld, who was famous in the Underworld, would live here. She might even think that this was the humble residence of a scholar. Lady Blackpool glanced over the scrolls piled up. A hint of disdain flashed in her eyes, but it soon disappeared. She walked up the wooden stairs to the attic. As soon as she climbed up the attic, she saw the back of a man in a thin white robe. Looking from the back, he looked like a scholar. He was writing in front of a writing desk. Blackpool greets the Emperor of the Underworld. Lady Blackpool knelt down again. The scholar continued writing. He said without turning his head, "Blackpool, why do you need to see me so urgently?" He looked like a harmless scholar, but no one could imagine that he was the Emperor of the Underworld, the ruler of the Underworld. Madame Hei Qi stood up and complained, "Emperor of the Underworld, why don't you control your subordinates? They even dared to attack me. What will happen to them in the future? They won't even take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously." The scholar let out a non-committal laugh and said, "I don't want to manage anything anymore. That's why I've delegated the authority to you guys. If you guys really don't want to, I can consider managing things again. That way, you guys can have peace and quiet." Lady Blackpool's expression changed. She said with a smile, "The Emperor of the Underworld is happy and angry." It was Blackpool who didn't know his place and shouldn't have quarreled with Qian-jun. The Emperor of the Underworld has worked hard for the Underworld for many years. As his subordinates, we should share the burden of the Emperor of the Underworld. We shouldn't have any complaints. I'm relieved to hear that. The scholar didn't stop writing. He dipped his brush into the ink and asked, "Why do you need to see me so urgently?" Here's the thing. A few days ago, I sent someone to check the underworld passages of the 72 worlds in the human world. They found that the gate to the underworld in one of the worlds was damaged, and a knocker was stolen. Lady Blackpool said angrily, "I didn't expect someone to be so daring. He even dared to damage the gate to the underworld. The people in the human world are getting more and more daring. They obviously don't take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously." Blackpool asked the Emperor of the Underworld to send someone to punish them. The scholar unhappily snorted. The brush in his hand stopped as he coldly said, "Hey Qi, how dare you to ignore my words? Did you forget my warning? Without my permission, no one from the underworld can intrude the human world. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry." Lady Blackpool knelt down again with a frightened expression. She explained, Blackpool didn't let anyone intrude the human world. He just sent someone to check the passage to the underworld. Blackpool has no selfish motives. He did it for the sake of the underworld. That's why he sent 2 servants from the underworld royal palace to carry it out. I believe they wouldn't dare to disobey the order of the Emperor of the Underworld. Remember, the human world is the foundation of the underworld. Without my permission, no one is allowed to intrude and disturb the order of the human world. Having said that, the scholar continued writing and said, "It seems that your prestige is getting higher and higher. You can even command the servants of the underworld royal palace." He exhaled softly and put the brush in his hand aside. He examined the painting with a grave expression and said, "For so many years, this scene has been haunting my mind, and I can't get it out of my head. I might as well draw it so that people in the future will know about it. After all, not many people know about it anymore. He seems to be interested now. He looks back at Lady Blackpool's seductive body and raises his hand to touch her plump breasts. But Madame Blackpool seemed to be attracted by the content of the scroll. She pointed at the 12 armored warriors and asked, "Are these the 12 legendary underworld generals?" The scholar nodded slightly and said, "That's right. Unfortunately, 6 of my 12 beloved generals died in that battle. Among the remaining 6, Black Armor died in the war. The army of the dark underworld that you took over is his former subordinate. Now, only the Silver Armor Warrior and the other 4 are left. Silver Armor Warrior is my personal guard, and he has been guarding the underworld royal palace. The other 4 are the masters of the other 4 palaces on the underworld Emperor Mountain. They are my brothers who have followed me to conquer the world. So, I have to warn you. Don't ever let me hear you call them slaves again. Otherwise, I don't mind destroying your cultivation and sending you to the endless dark sea to be a laborer." Blackpool shuddered. No wonder these 5 guys always looked down on her. They were the 12 legendary underworld generals of the underworld. But so what? The legend would be replaced one day. Blackpool, I know I was wrong. I didn't expect them to be the 12 underworld generals who follow the Emperor of the underworld. I thought the 12 underworld generals had died a long time ago. Madame Blackpool twisted her body in the scholar's arms. She said in a wrong tone, "They know I am your woman, but they still don't treat me nicely. It is obvious that they don't respect you, Underworld Emperor." The scholar caressed her smooth buttocks and laughed. "Ignorance is not a crime. I won't pursue the past. Also, they have followed me for many years. Even if they didn't contribute much, they still worked hard. You are too young to show off your status in front of them. You should endure it. It is only a matter of face. You won't lose anything. I will listen to the Emperor of the Underworld." Lady Blackpool's naked body wriggled again. She pointed at the man in the golden robe who fought alongside the Emperor of the Underworld and asked, "Who is he? How can he have such a terrifying cultivation?" "Jean Tai of the Immortal Realm." "Oh. He is the immortal emperor you speak of. His name is Jean Tai." The scholar smiled. "Immortal Emperor." Blackpool couldn't help but exclaim. She pointed at the man riding the dragon and asked, "Who is he? How come he forced the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor to fight together?" "Anne." She looked at the others who were attacking the man. She didn't finish her sentence because she didn't want to embarrass the Emperor of the Underworld. The scholar gazed at the man riding the dragon on the scroll with a solemn expression. He said slowly, "He came from a place that was sealed by Jean Tai and me. I still don't know how he got out of the place. I don't know his name. I have never heard of him in that place. He called himself the Myriad Swords Demonic Monarch, and his cultivation state is very high. What happened next? Where is that sealed place?" Madame Blackpool asked curiously. "Paw." The scholar slapped her buttocks forcefully with one hand and pinched her chin with the other, saying, "Didn't you say you would serve me? Why do you care so much?" Lady Blackpool was bewildered. Then she undressed the scholar with a flower-like smile. The 2 of them fell down on the ground. Amorous feelings immediately overflowed in the small building. Madame Blackpool tried her best to flatter the scholar and tried her best to please him. After a while, the 2 of them hugged each other. Lady Blackpool leaned on the scholar and complained, "You asked me to maintain the order of the underworld, but the gate to the underworld has been damaged. If I don't do anything, how will the people think of me?" "What are you trying to say?" the scholar asked carelessly. "At least, you should take back the ring that was stolen," Lady Blackpool said. The scholar's eyes turned cold. He glanced at her and said, "I heard that you are still longing for the blue sky, the green water, the singing birds, the fragrant flowers, the sun, the moon, and the stars in the human world. It seems like the rumor is true. However, this was also human nature. She was a woman after all. Women like the feasting and bustling life and can't stand the endless darkness of the underworld. Emperor of the underworld, you misunderstood me. I don't know who is framing me. Lady Blackpool wiggled her body and said in a spoiled manner, if we don't do anything and don't pursue this matter, someone might destroy the gate to the underworld in the future. It seems like you don't understand what I mean. The scholar humphed, I'm warning you, the cycle of the heavenly Tao has its own destiny. Even immortal Emperor Jean Tai and I can't get rid of this restriction. If you really want to get rid of this restriction, don't even think about it unless you become a god. Otherwise, you will bring a great disaster to yourself and the underworld. Become a god. Lady Blackpool was startled and flattered. Emperor of the underworld, aren't you the god of the underworld? Who dares to restrict you? If nothing can restrict me, why would I hide in the endless darkness for so many years? There are some things that you won't understand until you reach that level. The scholar stared at the ceiling and sighed. There is something called the cycle of the heavenly Tao. For example, the demon realm. Demon realm. Lady Blackpool propped up her naked upper body and asked, is it the demonic Tao that was rampant in the ancient times? The scholar nodded, yes. You won't understand how arrogant the demon realm was if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I know it clearly. The demon realm almost suppressed the immortal realm and the underworld. But what about the retribution? The demon realm was sealed, and the demon children and grandsons who stayed in the other realms were massacred and paid a heavy price. Is the demon realm the place where you and immortal emperor sealed? Lady Blackpool asked. The scholar didn't say yes or no. He continued, back then, Jean Tai and I didn't realize the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Later, because of the appearance of a pearl in the human world, the immortal realm and the underworld fought in the human world. The souls of countless living beings in the human world were destroyed, and they didn't even have the chance to reincarnate. This was the result of retribution. At that time, Jean Tai and I were blinded by greed and didn't realize this. Lady Blackpool's eyes flashed as she carefully asked, what kind of pearl could tempt you an immortal emperor? The scholar ignored her and continued to murmur as if he was recalling an unforgettable past. No one expected the retribution to come so fast. At this time, that 1,000 swords demon monarch came out of nowhere and killed people in the immortal realm and the underworld in the name of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Without a choice, Jean Tai and I joined forces again to protect ourselves, but we were still no match for him. We were almost trapped by a grand formation he set up. Luckily, we escaped quickly. Luckily, the 1,000 swords demon monarch was too arrogant and fell into Jean Tai's trap. He was severely wounded and finally fell into our hands. Lady Blackpool was fascinated by the story. She didn't think that there was someone that the Emperor of Hell and Immortal Emperor couldn't defeat. How powerful was this person? However, after the 1,000 swords demon monarch fell, the pearls suddenly disappeared without a trace. We couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried. It was as if it was just a dramatic farce, like a dream or a dream. After waking up from the dream, Jean Tai and I looked back at the devastated human world and were shocked. We didn't know how many living beings were killed by this farce. At this time, the heavenly Tao warned us. The entire human world was covered in dark clouds. Countless powerful golden thunderbolts struck and chased after Jean Tai and me. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape and return. Chapter 643. After that incident, Jean Tai and I realized that there is an irresistible force maintaining the balance in the world. It is invisible and untouchable. No matter who it is, the demon realm, the immortal realm, the underworld, or the human world, once they break the balance, they will be severely punished. The scholar looked solemn. Madame Blackpool felt her hair standing on end when she heard this. She looked out of the window and smiled unnaturally. Don't worry, Emperor of Netherworld. It has been a long time. Everything is fine now. Fine. Who knows? Maybe it is the preparation of the final score. Once it explodes, I don't know what the consequences will be. The scholar sighed. The Great War in the human world almost killed all the living beings in the human world. It caused such a terrible consequence. It is not something that can be easily forgotten. The demon realm did evil, so Jin Tai and I punished it severely. When Jin Tai and I committed evil deeds, the Myriad Swords demon monarch came to punish us. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape. Then, the golden thunder fell from the sky, but we dodged it again. Madame Blackpool giggled. Isn't it good? It means that Emperor of Netherworld is powerful enough to resist the unknown force. It can't do anything to you. You can't say it like that. I don't want it to happen again and again. I don't want it to happen again. I hope it will be over. If there is a third time, I am afraid that the punishment will be more severe after such a long time. It won't give us any chance to escape. Maybe both the immortal realm and the underworld realm will pay the unforgivable price for their evil deeds in the human world. The scholar suddenly smiled bitterly. I am a bit curious. If there is a final punishment, who will be the one to administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Will there really be a person who will administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Madame Blackpool asked weakly. His eyes flickered as he thought about how he had always wanted to replace a certain someone. He faintly suspected that he would be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heavens. Once this thought appeared, it was like a seed that began to sprout in his mind. No one can be sure. It is just a hunch. The scholar pushed her away and stood up naked. Madame Blackpool quickly got up and helped him put on his clothes. Then, she put on her clothes too. The scholar looked at her and said, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that you shouldn't think that the mortals in the human world are easy to bully. There is a pair of eyes in the unseen world that can see everything. Since you've already been born in the netherworld, you're a person of the netherworld. Don't think about the prosperity of the world anymore. No one can get everything they want. I can't, Kim can't, and you can't either. After saying this, the scholar walked to the desk, picked up the brush again, dipped it in ink, and continued with the next part of the scroll. Do you really think that Blackpool, am a 3-year-old kid? You can fool me with some nonsense. The Madam of Blackpool didn't think so, but she replied, Blackpool will remember the Emperor of the Underworld's teachings. But what about the knocker that was stolen from the Underworld gate? Are we really going to let the gate to the Underworld break and just stand there like that? What else can we do? The scholar continued, the gate of the Netherworld has existed since ancient times. I don't know who built it, but the materials used to forge it are extremely strange. Even I don't know what they are. It's easy to break them, but difficult to merge them. Once they are separated, it will be difficult to merge them again. It's said that one has to use the 3 true fire to forge it. But the people who know how to use the 3 true fire have disappeared. What else can we do? Since it's such a precious item, we can't lose it, said the Madam of Blackpool. Oh. You can tell me what you think, the scholar asked. She waited for a while, but the scholar didn't respond. She stopped writing and turned around. Just tell me what you want to say. Please forgive me. The Madam of Blackpool braced herself and said, we can send someone out to find the lost item. Emperor of the Underworld, please don't misunderstand me. I have no intention of disturbing the order of the human world. Think about it. A person who has the ability to break into the gate to the underworld must not be an ordinary mortal. The person who dared to steal the item from the gate to the underworld must have a purpose, otherwise, who would do such a thing? What if someone uses the lost knocker to forge a treasure that will bring harm to the human world? If we ignore it, what is the difference between that and disturbing the order of the human world? The scholar seemed to change his expression. He asked with furrowed brows, "Can we find it?" "We can try. If we can't find it, then forget it." Madame of Blackpool bowed and said, "If the Emperor of the Underworld agrees, I will send someone out to investigate in secret. Whether we can find it or not, we won't disturb the order of the human world." The scholar paused for a while and turned around to continue writing, saying, "Just this once. No matter what the result is, there is no second time. If there is a second time, you don't have to serve me anymore. Go to the boundless dark cliff and serve those laborers." This was considered as an agreement. The Madam of Blackpool was delighted. "Blackpool obeys your order. I agreed to let you send someone out, but I didn't agree to let you go in person," the scholar said coldly. Madame of Blackpool's joy instantly vanished. She had tried so hard to go to the human world because she had stayed in the dim netherworld for too long. Qian Jun walked to his side and glanced at the painting on the desk, saying with furrowed brows, "Emperor of the Underworld, the power of the army of the dark underworld has grown very fast. Some of the older members have been purged and replaced by her trusted followers. Moreover, they have been slaughtering in the underworld, which has already made people panic. The mention of the army of dark underworld has changed their expressions. Are we going to let her continue to cause trouble? What's wrong with that? Many experts have emerged in the underworld these years. All of them are restless. Let her suppress them and get rid of those troublemakers." As the Underworld Emperor said this, he patted the bulging silver shoulder guard on Qian Jun's shoulder, sighing emotionally, "Only a few of our brothers are left. We have to preserve our strength to deal with possible crises. This kind of small fight is not worth your time. We can't let you guys fail miserably. Since the death of the Black Armor Destroyer, I've had this idea. That's why I found this stupid woman. Let her cause trouble. Hee hee. So that's how it is. I thought you were bewitched by her beauty." Qian Jun said with a smile as he touched the painting on the desk, "The other brothers are full of anger, and they even want to kill that woman to wake you up. It seems that I have to inform them in advance. Even though I know, I have to tell them to keep acting like this and keep losing their temper. Don't be courteous to her. Although this woman is stupid, she is not stupid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen her to do this. Don't let her suspect anything," the Underworld Emperor said with a smile while looking outside the window. "Life in the underworld is indeed a bit lonely. It's not a bad thing to have such a beautiful woman bewitching me. At least she makes me feel comfortable. Qian Jun, do you think I'm right?" Hee hee. Qian Jun laughed heartily. He touched the 12 armored underworld generals on the painting, a hint of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, "Underworld Emperor, do you have any other orders? I'll go find them if there's nothing else." You should have heard what I said to her. The Underworld Emperor's eyes suddenly grew deep, as he said, "You have experienced what happened in the human world back then. Keep an eye on that stupid woman. Don't let her do anything stupid. If the heavenly punishment comes, none of us will be able to withstand it. I'll forget about the last time she sent someone out without my permission. If she dares do it behind my back again, it's useless to keep her alive. You destroy her cultivation and throw her to the endless dark sea. You don't need to report to me in advance." "Yes, Underworld Emperor." Qian Jun cupped his hands and turned into a silvery light, disappearing outside the window. Chapter 644. A figure flew above the cornucopia and was stopped by more than a dozen figures when he flew to the D-Rong Nation's Ice Palace shop. Yu Qianqiu showed a baffled expression and asked, "Why are you stopping me?" Mu Lianqiu, who was leading the law enforcement team, gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly, especially during the cornucopia meeting." Yu Qianqiu, don't tell me you don't know this rule. Bullsh*t rule. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart, but he said in surprise, "There's such a rule." "I really don't know." Mu Lianqiu's expression was dark and gloomy. He stared at Yu Qianqiu in silence for a while before saying slowly, "I hope there won't be a next time." "Definitely, definitely." Yu Qianqiu chuckled. Mu Lianqiu waved his hand, and the dozen people quickly flew back. Yan Zhuixing was already standing in the backyard of the Ice Palace shop after hearing the news. He stared at Yu Qianqiu in the air with a smile and said, "Brother Yu, welcome. Please come down quickly for a chat." Yu Qianqiu landed and cupped his hands. "How would I dare not come when Brother Yan invited me?" The two of them looked at each other and laughed. They were polite, but they each had their own ulterior motives. None of them were good people. Yan Zhuixing looked at the sky and said, "Brother Yu is a hero no matter where he goes. Yan Zhuixing is really envious that you don't even care about the rules of the cornucopia. It's fine if you don't abide by this kind of rule that only benefits a few people," Yu Qianqiu said sarcastically. "Even if I abide by it, no one will say anything good about me." "Ha! Brother Yu is indeed honest." Yan Zhuixing nodded and praised him. "I don't have any good points, but I like to speak the truth." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand without a care in the world, and sternly said, "Brother Yan, let's not beat around the bush. Are you buying the 7-star blood orchid or not? It's not convenient to talk here, right?" Yan Zhuixing looked around and raised his hand, "Please come upstairs." Yu Qianqiu glanced upstairs and knew that similar buildings had a soundproof formation. He touched his chin and said, "Is there an ambush waiting for me?" Yan Zhuixing smiled and said, "Brother Yu has Senior Wen's support. Why should I be afraid? Please." The two of them acted like old friends, smiling side by side as they went upstairs. Just as Yan Zhuixing pushed open a door, he suddenly heard a shrill scream coming from upstairs. Both of them were shocked, especially Yu Qianqiu, who quickly put up his guard. Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. He couldn't be bothered with him anymore and rushed upstairs. What the hell? Could it be a trap? Yu Qianqiu was confused. He was worried that it was a trap, but he couldn't help but rush upstairs. When he reached the top floor, he found the room where the scream came from and carefully pushed the door open. Bing Qingzi, Man Hu, and Yan Zhuixing were staring at a disciple who was rolling on the ground. The three of them looked at Yu Qianqiu who came in, but no one cared about him at this moment. There were two other disciples beside him who seemed to be panicking. Yu Qianqiu plucked up his courage and walked to Yan Zhuixing's side. The disciple rolling on the ground was emitting green smoke as if he was burning. Wrinkles gradually appeared on his face, and he was aging at a visible speed. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He couldn't help asking in a low voice, "Brother Yan, what's going on? Could it be that your ice palace is enforcing some sect rules and punishing disciples?" Yan Zhuixing shook his head slightly and said solemnly, "It's the 7 treasure pills sold by the World Chamber of Commerce. There's something wrong with it." Yu Qianqiu was dazed. He knew what the problem was, so he quickly shut his mouth and pretended that he knew nothing. All of a sudden, a huge and threatening aura spread out, forcing them to take a few steps back. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, making them feel like they were in a world of ice and snow. Bing Qingzi waved his sleeve, and the disciple rolling on the ground floated up into the air. Bing Qingzi's fingers were like the wind, shooting dozens of white light into the important acupoints of the disciple. Then, he pushed out a white mist from his palm and wrapped the disciple up. Apparently, he was treating the disciple. However, to everyone's surprise, the disciple's scream seemed to be even more painful. It was sharp and ear-piercing, as if he was being cut into pieces. Bing Qingzi's face was shocked. The white mist quickly retracted, and the disciple slowly landed on the ground, twitching and rolling on the ground. Everyone looked at each other in shock. What a powerful poison! It can even burn Jin Yuan. Bing Qingzi was shocked. He immediately turned around and stared at Man Hu, shouting, "What the hell is going on?" Man Hu was at a loss and said in panic, "Master, I also don't know what's going on. After I bought the elixir from the treasure tower, I came back directly." Bing Qingzi teleported to the side of the other two disciples. He grabbed their wrists and examined them. After a while, he loosened his grip and stared at Man Hu coldly. "It's the same 7 treasure elixir. Why are they fine?" When the two disciples heard that they were fine, the fear on their faces turned into relief. I. Master, I really don't know what's going on." Man Hu's face turned bitter. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two and found that one had just reached the core formation stage, and the other had just reached the nascent soul stage. He knew what was going on. Chapter 645. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were slightly cold, and he said in a deep voice, "Brother Yu, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. This matter has been proven to be false. It's better not to mention hearsay again, so as to avoid misunderstanding. AI. This matter has become a big deal. I'm just curious, so I asked casually." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand disapprovingly, and then asked, "I wonder how many blood orchids Brother Yan wants to buy." When it came to business, Yan Zhuixing didn't care about him anymore. He said sternly, "It depends on whether Brother Yu can take care of the price. If it's cheap, buy more. If it's expensive, buy less. Since Brother Yan has spoken, for the sake of old friends, I will naturally take care of the price." Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and thought for a while. The original price is 200 million upper-grade spiritual stones. If Brother Yan sincerely wants to buy, each one can be cheaper by 1,000 upper-grade spiritual stones. Man Hu snorted on the spot, "Something worth 1 billion is cheaper by 1,000. How can you say that?" Yan Zhuixing pressed his hand to him and said with a fake smile, "Brother Yu really thinks highly of me. I'm indebted to you for taking care of me. To make a long story short, I want 7 blood orchids. I wonder if Brother Yu has brought them." Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, 7 blood orchids are worth 1.4 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. Does Brother Yan bring enough money?" Yan Zhuixing knew that this guy was a sticky candy, and it was meaningless to continue. So, he took out 2 storage bags and handed them to him generously. Yu Qianqiu took them and checked the scene. After counting them, there were indeed 1.4 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. It seemed that the other party had already prepared to buy 7. After putting away the storage bags, he fiddled around for a while before returning another storage bag. "Here are 7,000 upper-grade spirit stones. You can count them." Yan Zhuixing didn't think it was too little. He took the bag and put it away without looking at it. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and placed 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground, saying, 7 pots of blood orchids, please inspect the goods, Brother Yan." The moment the 7 pots of blood orchids were placed out, Yan Zhuixing's eyes turned as cold as the stars and killing intent surged. Man Hu immediately shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, are you playing with us?" "Great Imperial Advisor Man Hu, what do you mean by that?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at the 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground and said in surprise, "These are genuine 7-star blood orchids. Don't you know what they are?" The 7-star blood orchid on the ground seemed to have no eyes. Dozens of slender leaves grew out of it like a pile of weeds. If it wasn't for its blood-red color and the faint smell of blood, it would be very difficult to associate it with the 7-star blood orchid. The most disgusting thing was that there was not even a shadow of an orchid. To be exact, it wasn't that he couldn't see it, but that it hadn't grown at all. Compared with the ones he sold at the stall before, it was completely a blood orchid seedling. Yan Zhuixing stared at the blood orchid on the ground and said indifferently, "The 7-star blood orchid seedling has 10 leaves. After that, it grows one leaf every year. After 100 years, it blossoms and bears fruit. After another 100 years, the fruit ripens and falls. These 7 pots of blood orchid are at most 30 years old. It's too different from the century-old blood orchid that Brother Yu sold before. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with cold eyes and said, Brother Yu, aren't you going too far by doing this? Brother Yen, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand repeatedly and explained, the 10 pots of blood orchid that you saw before have been bought by someone. The rest of the goods are really not good, but these 7 pots are already considered good among the remaining ones. If Brother Yen is not satisfied, you can return it. I will never say no. He didn't sincerely sell the blood orchid to Yan Juexing at all. This time, he came purely to see if Yan Juexing would buy it. Therefore, he made a few pots of inferior goods. It was fine if the other party didn't buy it, but he couldn't give the other party good things. He wasn't the kind of person who would leave trouble in the future just to make money. He just wanted to find an excuse to make the sale fail. Man who sneered, full of nonsense. I don't think you are sincere at all. There's no need to return it. Yan Juexing put away all the 7 pots of blood orchid. Man who immediately transmitted his voice, 8th junior brother, what are you doing? This blood orchid hasn't grown at all. Before he finished speaking, he heard Yan Juexing's voice transmission, eldest senior brother, you also know that this guy has no sincerity to sell to us. But I'm not a fool. Humph. There is a secret method in the demonic book to accelerate the blood orchid's ripening. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't expect the other party to buy it even though he deliberately made things difficult for them. He faintly felt that something was wrong. He couldn't help but smile. Brother Yen, you make me feel embarrassed. How about this? I'm also an honest person. I can't bear to see others suffer losses. You can return it first. I will definitely find you 7 pots of mature blood orchid within 3 days. Once he cheated the blood orchid back into his hands, there would be many reasons not to sell it in the future. Yan Juexing smiled faintly, that's too troublesome. If you really feel embarrassed, you might as well return the spirit stones to me. What do you mean? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Look at my eyes and you will understand. The faint smile on Yan Juexing's face turned indifferent. He said word by word, magic eye ecstasy. Yu Qianqiu was confused by him. He didn't know what he was talking about, so he looked at his eyes subconsciously. Suddenly, the other party's cold eyes instantly turned blood red. It was extremely demonic and dazzling. The red light flashed and pierced one's heart. There was a boom in his head. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that something was wrong. He wanted to look away, but he realized that he wasn't listening to his commands. His consciousness instantly blurred. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was in a sea of blood. His limbs were entangled by the blood vines that extended out from the sea of blood. He couldn't move at all. King Yan Juexing, you actually dared to trick me. B****, just you wait. Yu Qianqiu cursed. Seeing that he couldn't move his limbs, he immediately wanted to use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He wanted to teleport away and settle the score with Yan Juexing later. However, what terrified him was that he couldn't use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He couldn't even circulate the quintessential essence in his body. He quickly looked around and was alarmed. How could such a boundless sea of blood appear in the treasure basin? Clearly, this wasn't reality at all. Could it be that my sea of consciousness is trapped by this sea of blood? Brother Yen, let's talk nicely. There's no need to be angry over a few pots of blood orchids. As long as you let me out, I can have as many blood orchids as you want, and I'll guarantee the quality and quantity. Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped in the sea of blood, shook his head and shouted. Previously, he was still cursing, but now that he realized that there was nothing he could do, he immediately gave in. In his words, a wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him. As long as there's life, there's hope. When man who saw Yan Zhuixing use his demonic eyes to control Yu Qianqiu, he was stunned for a moment before he immediately laughed out loud. Yu Qianqiu, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Second junior brother, you can take revenge now. Man who couldn't hear the shouts in Yu Qianqiu's sea of consciousness, but Yan Zhuixing, whose eyes were shining with red light, could hear it. He sneered. Brother Yu, don't you think it's too late for you to say this now? Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped, immediately heard the rumbling sound coming from the sea of blood. It came from all directions, but he didn't know where it came from. He cursed the despicable and shameless beast in his heart. Sure enough, I guessed right. You've practiced some evil cultivation method. It's not too late, not too late. We can talk slowly and raise any conditions. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Yu Qianqiu laughed. However, his eyes were looking around in vain, trying to find a way to escape. I really want to have a good talk with you, brother Yu. The boundless sea of blood quickly rose into black smoke and dissipated. The sea of blood dissipated, revealing the vast and boundless sky of the universe, dotted with stars that would last for eternity. Chapter 646. The sea of blood in front of him suddenly turned into the stars of the universe. This kind of eternal brilliance made Yu Qianqiu somewhat dumbfounded. This was not the first time he saw this phenomenon. He remembered that the first time he saw it was in the 9th Netherworld cave. At that time, he was also in a predicament. So it was not a dream last time. He looked at the endless starry sky in disbelief, and the countless stars seemed to be staring at him. This illusion disappeared slightly, and in front of him, he saw Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu talking with confidence and composure, discussing how to play with him, bastard. Fortunately, this old man is blessed with a good life. He actually wants to use me as a puppet. Evil demon bastard, I will eliminate the demon today. Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his teeth itched, but he did not act rashly. He first tried to circulate the true essence in his body. Normal. He then used his divine sense to connect with utopia, and it returned to normal. Man Hu stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, Junior brother, is he really completely under your control now? Yan Zhuixing smiled somewhat proudly. Yes, his sea of consciousness and primordial spirit have been controlled by my devil eye. As long as it is my command, he will definitely obey. But if he goes back with this stupid appearance, it is impossible for Wen Lanfeng and the others to not see some clues. I am afraid that even if he goes back alive, it will still be troublesome. Man Hu suddenly revealed a sinister expression. It is better to just kill him and end all troubles. Kill your mother. Yu Qianqiu almost jumped up to beat Man Hu, but he still endured it and continued to maintain his stupid appearance, wanting to probe the two beasts. Yan Zhuixing slightly frowned. Senior brother, don't be impatient. Revenge is not urgent. Although my cultivation is not enough to control someone with a higher cultivation than me, Yu Qianqiu's cultivation is more or less the same as mine. After being hit by my demon eye ecstasy, he has become my puppet. Even with the help of a late soul transformation expert, he cannot escape my control. Without a way to remove it, it is difficult to break the demon barrier in the sea of consciousness. As long as he is still under my control, it is easy to kill him. Even if I ask him to commit suicide, he will do it. Demon eye ecstasy, soul involuntarily. As long as I awaken the control of his consciousness, even if I let him go, he will look the same as usual. It will be very difficult for others to notice anything. Demon eye. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such an evil spell. I didn't expect the demon eye to be so powerful. Man who exclaimed in surprise and said with some joy, "So, we can place an informer around Wenlan Fong. He can be of great help at the critical moment. That's one of the reasons why I haven't killed him yet." Yan Juixing stared at Yu Qianqiu and sneered, "This brat has always been elusive. Who knows how many secrets he is hiding? I have to interrogate him properly." "Not bad." Man who clapped his hands and praised, just in time to ask him where he got so many 7-star blood orchids. Seeing that he had figured it out, Yan Juixing was finally relieved. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, let me ask you. Where are the blood orchids that you previously sold?" Yu Qianqiu was happy in his heart and replied with a dumbfounded expression, "I sold them all." "Why is the answer the same as before?" Yan Juixing frowned slightly and felt that something was wrong. He didn't believe that this guy who was full of nonsense was telling the truth. He paused and asked, "Who did you sell it to?" "Niu Yud." Yu Qianqiu replied. Yan Juixing and Man who looked at each other. Both of them had a lingering fear of Niu Yud, this unfathomable and mysterious figure. Yan Juixing asked, "Why did he buy the 7-star blood orchids?" "He said that he can't let the 7-star blood orchids fall into the hands of that little bastard called Yan Juixing. Otherwise, he will harm the world sooner or later." Yu Qianqiu replied. The two of them didn't care about this scolding. Instead, they felt a chill down their spine. It seemed that Niu Yud had really seen through Yan Juixing's background. He could even see that he needed the 7-star blood orchids. Yan Juixing immediately asked, "Do you know who that Niu Yud is?" "An immortal from the immortal world." Yu Qianqiu said ignorantly. "An immortal?" The two of them couldn't help but exclaim. Yan Juixing asked again, "How do you know that he is an immortal from the immortal world?" Yu Qianqiu replied, "I accidentally summoned him from the immortal world at the immortal ascension stage in the fog forest." The two of them looked at each other. They had heard Bing Qingzi say that there might be an immortal ascension stage in the fog forest, but they didn't expect it to be true. Man who couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianqiu, is the treasure left behind by the myriad swords demon monarch real?" "It's fake." Yu Qianqiu replied casually. Who knew that this casual remark of his would cause trouble? Yan Juixing squinted his eyes and stared at Yu Qianqiu. He said word by word in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, I order you to commit suicide immediately to atone for your crime." Man who looked at Yan Juixing in astonishment. He didn't know why Yan Juixing would suddenly say something like this. Yan Juixing was just counting the benefits of keeping Yu Qianqiu alive. Now that Yu Qianqiu is of great use, why does he want to kill Yu Qianqiu? What he didn't know was that the person controlled by the demonic eye would only listen to one person. Logically speaking, in such a muddle-headed state, it was impossible for Yan Juixing to reply to him. Naturally, it aroused Yan Juixing's suspicion. Although it wasn't as powerful as his master's profound yin palm, as long as it hit Yu Qianqiu, the cold poison would be enough to make Yu Qianqiu lose the ability to resist. Devil's Claw. Yan Juixing's fist instantly turned into 5 malevolent claws, and each of his fingers instantly became thin and sharp. With 5 red rays, the claws whizzed over and joined hands with Man Who to attack from the left and right. The three of them soared into the air and quickly exchanged blows. If Yu Qianqiu dared to be arrogant, he naturally had the ability to be arrogant. He wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he naturally had his own trump card. The word "explode" popped out from his mouth. In that instant, Yan Juixing's pupils shrank as he sensed the terrifying aura that he had seen in the saber-drawing assembly. While he was still in the air, he shouted, "Go!" The 5 claws grabbed onto Man Who's arm and burst forth with a powerful force, pushing him away. Yan Juixing then rapidly retreated in the air with his arms spread out like a bat. The instant Man Whose body smashed through the wall, he personally witnessed the fragments of the big black saber explode on the ground. Intense black flames engulfed Yan Zhuixing in a sea of flames, and a cold and terrifying aura surged over man who quivered from the cold and quickly teleported far away into the air. He exclaimed to the people below, "Junior brother." Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to let the power of the black flames spread too far, or it would definitely arouse the suspicion of Niu Yud and him. After the black flames exploded, he quickly retracted them back into his body. The instant he leapt into the air, although the entire shop wasn't on fire, it turned a deathly gray color and collapsed. He directly broke through the roof and leapt into the air. There was an uproar on the street. The people nearby all felt a sudden terrifying cold aura, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye, as though it was an illusion. Such a huge commotion immediately attracted the law enforcement guards led by Mu Lianqiu. They surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who was floating in the air. Mu Lianqiu shouted angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, how do you explain this?" Yu Qianqiu ignored the law enforcement guard surrounding him and glanced coldly at Man Hu. Then, he looked around and gathered his quintessential essence to speak loudly, "Yan Zhuixing, I know you are fine. Why are you hiding? Everyone didn't go all out just now. If you have the ability, come out and fight again. Let me have a taste of your demonic technique." His voice resounded in the surroundings. There was no reaction from Yan Zhuixing, but more and more spectators gathered on the ground. Seeing how condescending he was, Mu Lianqiu immediately said furiously, "Yu Qianqiu, what do you think the World Chamber of Commerce is? It's none of your business. If you don't want to die, then get out of my way." Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at him. He shook his sleeves, and green lights flashed out from his sleeves like floating clouds in flowing water. Countless green flying swords circled around his body and dispersed. Chapter 647. The law enforcement guards surrounding Yu Qianqiu were forced away by the ever-growing group of flying swords. Mu Lianqiu's expression was gloomy, and he wished for nothing more than to take down Yu Qianqiu on the spot. However, he knew clearly in his heart that the targets of law enforcement and punishment didn't include people with deep backgrounds like Yu Qianqiu. It was fine to frighten ordinary cultivators, but once he acted rashly, the consequences weren't something he could bear. There were some things that everyone was well aware of, and it was important to give each other face. However, people like Yu Qianqiu did not follow common sense at all. He caused trouble again and again, treating cornucopia's rules like bullsh*t. The strict image that Mu Lianqiu had painstakingly built up for the world commerce was destroyed in one day. He unscrupulously tore down the shameful cover of strict law enforcement, allowing everyone to see the ugly face behind it. What rules? They were just bullying the weak. When encountering a powerful person, they immediately revealed their true colors. Yu Qianqiu had always scoffed at this broken rule, let alone now. A total of 2,000 green flying swords hovered in the air. The scene was truly spectacular. No one present had seen a person controlling so many flying swords at the same time. They were all dumbfounded and sighed inwardly. The number one expert below the soul formation stage was indeed not just for show. Actually, this was not the upper limit of what Yu Qianqiu could control. He had tried it at the Immortal Ascension platform. With his current early-stage tribulation passing cultivation, he could control 3,000 flying swords at the same time. However, it seemed that it was not stable to control it in a fight. He could only control 2,000 flying swords with ease. The brilliant green flying swords hovered in the air, forming a huge green halo. Yu Qianqiu stood in the center with a murderous aura as he swept his gaze around. He was really angry. His robe swelled up without any wind and fluttered in the wind. He did not restrain his murderous aura at all. He had almost died today. Yan Zhuixing's demonic technique was a great taboo to him. If he did not get rid of him before he matured, Yu Qianqiu would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. The enmity between the two sides was very difficult to reconcile. Sooner or later, they would have to fight to the death. If he was allowed to grow, it was needless to say who would be the unlucky one. What made Yu Qianqiu the most unwilling was that the 7 pots of blood orchids were very likely to be of great benefit to Yan Juixing's demonic arts, yet he had to personally give them to him. Inside the Onyx Palace, a black light flashed and turned into the cold and noble Lady Blackpool. However, there was an irrepressible anger in that noble temperament. Even though she was suppressing it, others could still see that she was in a bad mood. Dragging her long skirt, she climbed up to the back seat in the middle of the hall. Her phoenix eyes glanced at the maids on both sides who didn't dare to come close, and she knew that she was a little angry. After slowly calming himself down, he called out, "Fei Feng." Maid Fei Feng walked to the back seat and bowed. "Madam, what can I do for you?" Madam Blackpool said indifferently, "The Underworld Emperor asked me to send someone to the human world to find the lost door knocker. Who do you think should go?" She had no hope of getting out, so she didn't want to get involved in this matter. However, the Underworld Emperor ordered that even if she had to deal with it, she had to pretend to do it. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain to the Underworld Emperor when he asked. Fei Feng bowed and said, "Since it is the Underworld Emperor's order, we should send a smart and capable person. Any commander of the army of the dark underworld can be qualified for this position." Enough. Madam Blackpool suddenly slammed her palm on the armrest of the back seat. No one knew where the anger came from. Fei Feng knelt down and kowtowed in fear, saying, "Fei Feng said something wrong. Please forgive me, madam." Madam Blackpool was about to say something disrespectful, but she forcefully suppressed it. She looked around, wondering if there were spies of the Underworld Palace here. She put on a smile and said, "You didn't say anything wrong. But the army of the dark underworld is responsible for suppressing the riots and maintaining the stability of the underworld. It can't be mobilized easily. Otherwise, if something unexpected happens, I can't explain to the Underworld Emperor." "Yes, yes, yes. I didn't consider it thoroughly," Fei Feng said while kowtowing. But she murmured in her mind that there were tens of thousands of commanders in the army of the dark underworld. What could mobilizing one commander do? Madam Blackpool said with a smile, "Moreover, it is not necessary to mobilize a commander in the human world. Where is Lu Mei? I haven't seen him for a long time." "Lu Mei offended Madam last time and was sent to prison by Madam," Fei Feng reminded her carefully. It is just a small matter. He has been punished. Let him out." Madam Blackpool waved her hand and said, "Tell him to come see me as soon as possible." Fei Feng took the order and left. Soon, she came back with a tall and thin man with green eyebrows and a pale face. As soon as the man stepped into the palace gate, he ran to the back of the palace and kneeled down, crying, "Madam, your servant knows his sin, your servant knows his sin, your servant should not have made Madam unhappy." His voice was sharp and shrill, there was a hint of an eunuch's voice. "All right. Don't cry. I forgive you. Come here." Madam Blackpool waved her hand with a smile. Lu Mei immediately crawled to the back seat. He hugged her legs and massaged them gently. He looked up at her and smiled through his tears. "Madam, thank you for your forgiveness. Madam, you don't know. I feel worse than death if I don't see you for a day. If you punish me again, please don't put me in prison again. I can't bear the pain of not seeing you. I would rather die at your feet." Madam Blackpool was amused by him and laughed. The haze in her heart disappeared. She then nodded and smiled, "I understand your loyalty. That is why I have a good task for you to do as a reward for your loyalty. No, I am not going anywhere. I would rather die than leave Madam." Lu Mei hugged Madam Blackpool's legs and refused to let go. Madame Blackpool's phoenix eyes immediately turned cold. She said indifferently, "You dare to disobey me?" Lu Mei was startled. He let go of her legs and kowtowed repeatedly, "Madam, if you have any orders, just let me know. I will die 10,000 times for you." Flattery sounded nice, but it was impossible for him not to be afraid of death. How could a shameless person not be afraid of death in order to survive? "That's right." Madame Blackpool recovered her smile and said, "A knocker and 2 animal teeth on the door ornaments of one of the underworld gates in the 72 world passages were stolen. The Emperor of the Underworld ordered me to send someone to the human world to find them. It is such a good task. I think only your loyalty can reassure me. Lu Mei, you won't disappoint me, will you?" Hearing this, Fei Feng glanced at him secretly but didn't dare to say anything. She didn't know what Madame Blackpool was thinking. How could she let a flattering man carry out the task ordered by the Emperor of the Underworld? She should at least find someone with a high cultivation state. Lu Mei looked up at Madame Blackpool in disbelief. It was indeed a good task. Who didn't want to go back to the human world after living in the dark underworld? But he knew what he was capable of. Besides, he had accompanied Madame for a long time, and he knew that Madame Blackpool wanted to travel to the human world. How could she give such a good opportunity to him? He couldn't figure it out. "What? You don't want to do it?" Madame Blackpool asked in a deep voice. "No, no." Lu Mei waved his hands and said gingerly, "But my cultivation state is too low. I am only in the middle stage of the underworld warrior. I am afraid that I will ruin the Emperor of the Underworld's plan and implicate Madame." The cultivation states in the underworld were divided into 4 levels: the Underworld Warrior, the Underworld Saint, the Underworld Venerable, and the Underworld Emperor. Each level was further divided into 3 levels. The top ghost practitioners in the human world, even if they had the cultivation state of the Ghost Saint, were just mediocre in the underworld. They were at most the outstanding ghosts, but they couldn't form the underworld body. Once they formed the underworld body, they could travel between the 3 realms. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to expose themselves under the scorching sun. There was a big difference between the 2 levels. "You worry too much about this," Madame Blackpool said disdainfully. "In the human world, the top swordsmen are only in the last stage of the Huashan realm. In fact, they are not even in the early stage of the underworld warrior. You are in the middle stage of the underworld warrior, so you can be invincible in the human world. What is there to be afraid of?" Lu Mei's eyes brightened. How could he forget this after staying in the underworld for so long? His cultivation state in the underworld was not very high, but in the human world, he was definitely a top-notch swordsman. He said with a silly smile, "I am stupid. Thank you for reminding me, Madam. I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam." Madame Blackpool glanced at him enviously and sent a message to him secretly, "You should take care of your business first. After that, I will allow you to stay in the human world for half a month. Remember, write down anything new and tell me about it when you come back." After sending the message, she said seriously, "Go find Fei Feng. She will tell you where you are going." After receiving the secret decree, Lu Mei kowtowed with a smile and said, "I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam." Then he left. In the hall of the Ghost King in the chilly Wind Valley, Yu and the others still had not figured out what happened in the 9th Netherworld cave last time. Seeing that there was no negative reaction after the incident, they gradually forgot about it. But they still had some doubts. But just as the ghost generals gathered to discuss the matter, outside the Ghost King Hall, a fierce wind suddenly blew violently again, causing the outside world to darken. Everyone was shocked. Yu dashed out first and led a group of ghost generals to the outside of the 9th Netherworld cave again. However, just as everyone arrived, the violent and angry wind suddenly returned to normal, causing the group of people to scratch their heads in confusion. In the deepest part of the 9th Netherworld cave, behind the 1-meter-wide netherworld gate, a green light flashed. Lu Mei suddenly appeared and looked around. After the netherworld gate behind him closed slowly, he turned around and stared at the place where one of the knockers was missing. He laughed in a high-pitched voice, "How dare you? It seems that the cultivators in the human world are tired of living. How dare you steal the thing on the netherworld gate? Today, I will let you know my power when I come to the human world." Not only did he know how to flatter and boast, but he also had a serious and responsible attitude when doing things. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive under Madame Blackpool's feet until now. Chapter 648. Predecessors plant trees, descendants enjoy the shade. Nianfeng's eyes are sad. I was kind-hearted, so I dug a tunnel to make it convenient for descendants to enter and exit, leaping over 1,000 worries. Green Eyebrows was confused, not knowing what he meant. Nanhai Nongzhu came here. Yu Qianchou. There are quite a lot of people here. Lu Mei's eyes suddenly froze. There was a line of handwriting on the hard iron without any pause. Obviously, it was written in one go. It could be seen that the person's cultivation was obviously higher than the previous two. He could not help but murmur, "The world is lonely and invincible, but I have no fate to ascend to heaven. I have long heard that the netherworld is equal to the world of immortals and wants to find a strong opponent. What a reckless human cultivator. How arrogant." He was already laughing sinisterly at the end of the sentence. "By Changchun, the world is invincible. It seems that you are the one who stole the knocker. Ordinary people can't reach the gate of the underworld." Lu Mei laughed sinisterly. He had already found the target he was looking for. He turned into a green light and flashed out of the 9th netherworld cave. However, he hadn't gone far when he reappeared and stopped. He looked at the tunnel under his feet and then at the eye of the wind in front of him. After a moment of shock, he finally understood what the line of words meant. It turned out that someone had dug a tunnel in the netherworld cave and wanted it to be convenient for the descendant to enter and exit. Yu Qianchou. Another reckless guy. Hee. I didn't expect the human cultivator to be so arrogant that he dares to destroy the things in front of the underworld. After a sharp laughter, the green light floated up and directly passed through the eye of the wind and disappeared. Outside the 9th netherworld cave, everyone stared at the entrance for a long time. After a moment of hesitation, Sai Zhangfei and Zhang Ling suddenly cupped their hands and said to Yu Ji, "Madam, I would like to go to the 9th netherworld cave to find out what is going on." Yu Ji shook her head gently and said, "No need, you can't go deep inside. No one knows what is going on inside. Breaking in by force is tantamount to suicide. Let nature take its course. It will explode, as long as it doesn't affect us." Before he could finish his sentence, he heard a gasp of surprise from the crowd. A green light flashed out of the cave and turned into a person floating in the air, looking around curiously. The person was tall and thin, wearing a brocade green robe. The most peculiar thing was that there was a pair of green eyebrows on his pale face. No one could see through his level of cultivation, and he came from the 9th abyss cave. Everyone looked at each other, and they had a faint guess that they did not dare say out loud. Beside the 1,000-mile lake of the Obedient Island, Bai Changchun, who was standing with his hands behind his back, had been paying attention to the movements in the mirror. When he saw the green-robed man coming out from the 9 netherworld cave, he immediately raised his hand and put away the mirror. He disappeared without hesitation and flashed in the direction of the Chanchili Wind Valley. On the cliff, Yu Ji gave Ghost General Zhang Ling a meaningful look. The latter took a step forward, cupped his hands and said, "May I know which expert has graced us with his presence in the Valley of Chilly Wind?" The green-robed person ignored his question and coldly checked everyone's cultivation. He didn't find anyone worth mentioning. None of them seemed to be people who could easily leave words on the netherworld iron. He couldn't help but shake his head and laugh in a shrill voice. What a group of pitiful people. After death, they didn't go to the underworld to serve the emperor of the underworld. Instead, they stayed in the human world and became neither human nor ghost. I am the underworld messenger. I have something to ask you. Who is your leader? Come out and answer. The underworld messenger. Everyone was shocked. Just as they had guessed, they all became uneasy. Although Yuji was afraid, as the leader, others could retreat, but she couldn't. She squeezed out a smile and bowed. I am the Lord of Chilly Wind Valley. What does the underworld messenger want to ask? Oh, a woman. The green-robed person glanced at the ghost generals. She didn't expect the leader to be a woman. A trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. She said indifferently, I ask you something. You have to answer honestly. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Let me ask you, do you know who stole the knocker from the gate of the underworld? Hearing this, everyone was shocked again. They didn't expect that someone would dare to steal from the gate of the underworld. Yuji forced herself to be calm and shook her head. We really don't know about this. The green-robed person snorted coldly. As the master of this place, how can you not know? Do you want me to punish you before you will tell the truth? Please calm down, underworld messenger. Yuji smiled apologetically. The gate of the underworld is a legendary thing to us. Nobody has seen it. With our cultivation, we won't be able to get there. If someone could get there, their cultivation would definitely be higher than ours. It would be a piece of cake for them to hide from our eyes and not be discovered. The green-robed person thought for a while and nodded slightly. This is the truth. I don't think you dare to lie to me. Let me ask you again. Who has the highest cultivation in this world? Who is invincible? Yuji subconsciously thought of Bai Changchun, but she didn't dare to speak nonsense. She replied again, Underworld messenger, you don't know this. This place is called the Demon Ghost Domain. They naturally knew the consequences of the madam's words. After a long silence, Zhongling walked over worriedly and asked, Madam, what should we do? When Yuji heard this, she quickly restrained her emotions, and a confident look of encouragement appeared on her face. Lord Disciplinary Envoy is famous throughout the world, and his cultivation base is unfathomable. Don't worry, everyone. I'll head to Obedient Island right now to report the details to Lord Disciplinary Envoy. Everyone looked at each other. Although she said that, the other party was an envoy from the underworld. His cultivation was definitely not ordinary, so it was strange that they didn't worry. However, Zhongling cupped his hands and said with an unusually firm tone, I am willing to accompany you to Shantian Island. Yuji smiled indifferently and nodded slightly. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Zhongling and the group of ghost generals kneeling down in terror and bowing, Greetings, Lord Disciplinary Envoy. Yuji suddenly turned around and saw an old man in a green robe standing behind her. He seemed to be staring at the entrance of the 9th Netherworld cave. Looking at his back, who else could it be but the torture envoy? She was so scared that she immediately knelt down and said, Yuji greets the torture envoy. Bai Changchun slowly turned around. His eyes were shining brightly on his thin face. He glanced at the people kneeling on the ground, and his gaze finally landed on Yuji, who was kneeling on the ground. With an emotionless tone, he asked, Where did the man in green go? Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that the torture envoy already knew what happened here. Otherwise, how could he know that there was a man in the green robe? Yuji immediately repeated the conversation between her and the man in the green robe in detail. She didn't dare to hide anything. Bai Changchun looked to the west and snorted expressionlessly, the underworld envoy. That's exactly what I want. As long as I'm here, how can you people from the underworld do as you please? Let me deal with you. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. A white hole appeared in the west corner of the protective formation, and then it slowly closed. The people kneeling down only dared to stand up after a long time. They all opened their eyes with lingering fear and disappointment. Thinking of the torture envoy's words, they were all speechless. The torture envoy was indeed the torture envoy. From what he said just now, he went to chase after the underworld envoy. In the treasure bowl, Yu Qianqiu, who was surrounded by a huge cyan halo, stood in the air. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. With a murderous aura, he shouted again, "Yan Juexing, if you still don't come out, prepare to collect your first senior brother's corpse." The onlookers were in an uproar. They once again witnessed Yu Qianqiu's arrogance. Man who was in the air, said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? If it wasn't for Senior One backing you up, we might not even know who would be collecting the corpse." Chapter 649. What a stubborn duck. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Numerous sword shadows wrapped around him and rose to the same height as Man Hu. He said indifferently, "Are you interested in a duel with me? We'll fight to the death. Don't run away. Those who die can only blame it on their bad luck. If you can kill me, I'll say this in advance. Senior One won't look for trouble with you. Everyone can be my witness. Do you dare?" With Yu Qianqiu's current means, he didn't care about experts at the late stage of crossing tribulation. The only problem was that his cultivation was still lacking. If he fought with experts at the late stage of crossing tribulation, he wouldn't be able to catch up if his opponent used teleportation. That was why he provoked Man Hu. First, he set a rule. No one was allowed to run. It was up to Man Hu to agree. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Man Hu shouted. Regardless of whether he could win against Yu Qianqiu or not, he couldn't lose the face of Ice Palace as the chief disciple. Ha! Yu Qianqiu laughed wildly. "Good, you've got guts. Stop." An angry shout came. Bing Qingzi suddenly appeared. A group of 300 people appeared on the God of Wealth peak. All of them were lords of Spirit's severing stage. Their imposing manner was astonishing, but none of them looked good. Even Yin Baikong was astonishingly among them. However, his complexion was even worse than Yu Qianqiu's. His eyes were fixedly staring at Yu Qianqiu as if he wanted to skin him alive. Bing Qingzi's gaze landed on the collapsed Ice Palace. His hair and beard stood on end as he roared at Yu Qianqiu, "Yu Qianqiu, do you really think I won't dare to kill you? Bing Qingzi, why are you angry at a junior? What's there to say?" When Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing, and Nongzhu showed up at the crucial moment. When Lanfeng couldn't intervene in the matters between juniors. But when a group of old guys showed up, he couldn't ignore it. However, when Lanfeng had a headache. Why was this kid always causing trouble? Couldn't he just stop and rest? When Lanfeng. Bing Qingzi angrily pointed at the shop below and said, "What is the meaning of this? Don't go too far." Nongzhu glanced at it and touched her forehead speechlessly. This matter was getting out of hand. Lu Yanqing was already frowning. When Lanfeng paused and looked at Yu Qianqiu. "Put away your flying sword. What's going on? What happened?" Yu Qianqiu retorted with a question, and then he looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. The flying sword circled and danced even faster, and his killing intent erupted once again. He pointed at Man Hu and said sternly, "Man Hu, do you dare to swear that you will tell me everything that Yan Juexing did to me?" Hearing him say such angry words, everyone's gaze turned towards Man Hu. Barbarian Tiger was caught unprepared. Just a moment ago, he was ready to fight, but now, his heroic spirit suddenly turned into dodgy eyes. Anyone could tell that he was like a cornered dog that would do something desperate. He had the tendency to go berserk. Pei Fong winked at Qi Zhejuan and Ouyangde, and the three of them stood between him and Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, speak boldly. Pei Fong sneered. Whether it was true or not, the three of them would benefit the most from defeating Bing Qingzi. That was why the three of them were so proactive in protecting Yu Qianqiu's safety. The gloomy Yin Baikong secretly transmitted his voice to Sikongju, send more people to set up ambushes at all the passages of cornucopia. Don't let Yan Zhuixing escape. It's best to capture him alive. Sikongju quietly left to make arrangements. Hee. Yu Qianqiu put on a fake smile and said, I reckon that Yan Zhuixing hasn't mastered his demonic arts. Perhaps he's still in the beginning stages. After I lost consciousness for a short while, I actually recovered. I unintentionally overheard his conversation with Man Hu. It turns out that his demon eye ecstasy can turn people into his puppets. No matter how high your cultivation is, you will still be controlled by him. Furthermore, the 7-star blood orchid can help him master his demonic arts quickly. Once he succeeds, he will unify the entire cultivation world. Since he wanted to target Yan Zhuixing, it was impossible for him to not add oil to the fire. He continued to ramble. As soon as my body returned to normal, I immediately fought with the two of them. TSK. He casually threw a punch called Little Demonic Fist and actually shattered my big black saber into pieces. Amazing! My saber is a treasure saber that surpasses high-grade spiritual treasure. It actually couldn't block a single punch from him. Once he masters his demonic arts, it will be terrible. What a pity. When he saw that his demonic arts were exposed and that he couldn't kill me in a short period of time, he didn't bother me and immediately ran away. Everyone saw what happened afterward. Man Hu, the person involved, naturally knew that Yu Qianqiu was taking the opportunity to blow up the matter. He immediately shouted, Seniors, don't listen to his nonsense. He's completely talking nonsense. He and my junior brother have a grudge in China's cultivation world. He's taking the opportunity to take revenge. Bing Qingzi also sneered, Yu Qianqiu, do you really think that we're all 3-year-old kids that can be easily fooled? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. It sounded too mysterious and they didn't know if it was true or not. But for Pei Fong and the other two, it was enough for them to blow up the matter. Yu Qianqiu raised his brows and said, It's easy to distinguish whether it's true or not. You can call Yan Zhuixing out and confront him face to face. I have a way to force out his demonic arts. Ignorant junior, who do you think I am? Do you think I have to listen to your orders? If it wasn't for giving face to the others, would you still be alive today? Bing Qingzi said with a stern expression. Just at this moment, Sikongju quickly flashed over and cupped his hands towards Yin Baikong. Master, there's news from the passageway. Yan Zhuixing has already left the treasure basin in a hurry 2 hours ago. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.